Hello everybody. Today our topic is overcoming homelessness in the United States and the difficulty in doing so. And I'm going to start off with a personal experience that I've had with homelessness. I was once homeless in Seattle, Washington. Worst yet, during the winter months. What I experienced was intense, humiliating, and was possibly the worst experience I ever had. Shelters were overcrowded, and more times than not, I was turned away because there was no space for any more people. I feared sleeping on the cold streets of Seattle because many times I saw police officers kicking the sleeping homeless men and women on the streets, spitting on them, and once I even saw an officer urinate on a man. This left me with the only option being to sleep between bushes or trees, close by the shoreside, in freezing weather. It was hard to sleep because of the cold. I had to lug everything I owned with me everywhere I went. Even if I was lucky enough to stay in a shelter, with blood and feces on the wall, floors, and mats meant to be slept on, I could never leave my items alone or keep them in any place within the shelter. Showers were even harder to find than shelter, and food, most times, was impossible. The lines at soup kitchens were so dreadfully long that sometimes, by the time I reached the front, the food was gone. I tried to apply for food stamps. Not Medicaid, not government assistance, just food stamps. After an entire day of waiting with the humiliation of smelling and looking like a homeless woman, I was denied food stamps. The woman who saw me said I hadn't been homeless long enough to qualify. I'd have to wait another 2 months, she said. Imagine that. Many times I tried applying for work. However, no employer will employ a woman who smells like death, is carrying everything she owns at her side, has no address or contact number to call on. Many times in the streets when I was shivering on the sidewalks, cold-hearted citizens who are not homeless would sneer, turn up their noses, scream out things like, "Get a job," or, "Aren't you ashamed of yourself?" It was the worst situation of my life. Unfortunately, for me, as most others who are homeless, I had no other choice but to turn to drastic means to escape the fate, which I will not share. What I will share, however, is the plight of the homeless and how incredibly difficult it is to escape it. Based on my own experience, the experience of others, and gathered statistical data, I will show you how impossible these situations are and how stereotypes further damn the homeless. The homeless are oftentimes ignored, and more times than not, people who have never experienced homelessness fancy that the reason why people are homeless are due to sheer laziness or a lack of education. In fact, some people even dare to assert that homeless people are homeless because they choose to be homeless. This is simply largely not the case. In the next few minutes, I will demonstrate A, the great number of people that are homeless and the demographics of the homeless, B, the many reasons why overcoming homelessness is incredibly difficult, and C, the difficulty in obtaining government help or any other type of help for the homeless. Homelessness in the United States is a lot greater than you may imagine it to be. A lot of people think that the United States is the best country in the world, so therefore there should be a low amount of homeless people. However, according to the National Law Center on Homelessness and Poverty in 2004, a study of homelessness in 50 cities found that in just about every city, the city's official estimated number of homeless people greatly exceeded the number of emergency shelter and transitional housing spaces. Also, according to the Urban Institute in the year 2000, on a given night in February, 842,000 experienced homelessness, which translates to almost 10% of the population of people living in poverty. Converting these estimates into an annual projection, these numbers emerge that there are 2.3 million people and 3.5 million people that will experience homelessness. And then this translates to approximately 1% of the U.S. population experiencing homelessness in a year, 38% of which are children. The demographics of the homeless are not simply drug addict men or women or lazy people. This is a very common misconception. According to the National Healthcare for the Homeless Council, among surveyed homeless people, only 38% have an alcohol problem, and only 26% have a problem with drugs. Where does that leave the other percentages? And according to the U.S. Conference of Mayors in 2006, in its 2006 surveys of 25 cities, they found that the sheltered homeless population is estimated to be 42% African American, 38% white, 20% Hispanic, 4% Native American, and 2% Asian. according to the National Law Center on Homelessness and Poverty 2004, their same study, children under the age of 18 accounted for 39% of the homeless population, and 42% of these children were under the age of 5. The same study also found that unaccompanied minors comprised 5% of the urban homeless population. This means that they didn't even have parents. However, in other cities, and especially in rural areas, the numbers of children experiencing homelessness are much higher. According to the National Law Center on Homelessness and Poverty, in 2004, 25% of the homeless were ages 25 to 34. And the same study found percentages of homeless persons aged 54 to 64 at 6%. There's a lot of reasons why homelessness is very difficult to overcome, and why the problems with homelessness are many. One of the first and most obvious problems would be a lack of money. According to the National Law Center on Homelessness and Poverty, lack of adequate income significantly contributes to homelessness. In 2002, 2.6 million Americans held full-time jobs that did not pay enough to raise them above the federal poverty threshold. They also experience a lack of assistance. It's hard to get assistance from the government. It's hard to get assistance from family. It's hard to get assistance from anybody when you're in that situation. According to the NLCHP's survey in 2004, this is the percentage of people that were denied the following benefits in a given month. 51.1% were denied SSI benefits, or supplemental security income. 30.6% were denied temporary aid to needy families. 53.1% were denied food stamps. 54.1% were denied access to shelters or housing services. And 45.1% were denied access to Medicaid or any medical services. People that experience homelessness also experience intense acts of violence. According to Change.org, from 1999 to 2008, there were 880 acts of violence against homeless people that resulted in 244 deaths. Causes of death include being decapitated, set on fire, and pelted with glass bottles. A large percentage of perpetrators are thrill-seeking teenagers, according to the National Coalition for the Homeless. There is no explanation other than that these attackers saw the homeless as vulnerable objects, a faceless entity without representation or differentiation, and felt that attacking them was little different than smashing a mailbox with a baseball bat. Who can argue that these victims were targeted for any reason other than the fact that they were homeless? Another problem that the homeless have in overcoming homelessness is their difficulty obtaining documentation. Employers will not employ a person who does not have an ID, an address, or a working phone. Most homeless people cannot afford and do not have these things. And even if they do have the opportunity to write down as their address the homeless shelter, they are discriminated against because their address is a homeless shelter. Most homeless people are also so hungry that they hardly have the energy to move, never mind to work, even if they were lucky enough to find a quote-unquote off-the-books job. Some people are born homeless and remain homeless for most of their lives. And many homeless people are forced to turn to crime in order to survive, according to an article by the Miami Herald in January 21st, 2006. Many homeless people do not have supportive families, a network of people, and even times not even the government to turn to when the milk spills. Many homeless people who are ill, some even dying of illnesses, cannot get health care. Clearly, homelessness is not easy to overcome in the United States. It's also clear that it's not sheer laziness, an unwillingness to work, or because they chose this lifestyle. The people that become homeless, rather, and their families are in situations they cannot escape. They're unable to escape their hardships because of multiple factors, including hunger, illness, hygiene, lack of shelter, lack of help, crime, and public ostracism. Hopefully, the next time you see a man shivering in the streets, or a woman with her children huddled under a tree in the dark of the night, you'll think twice before passing judgment. Stop camera.